It started with a sound, faint and trembling, almost lost beneath the daily chorus of honking cars, murmuring pedestrians, and the relentless hum of the city. Yet, it was unmistakably the cry of a dog, not the sharp bark of warning or the playful yip of youth, but a long, broken whimper that held the weight of fear, exhaustion, and something far worse, desperation. And as the Friday evening rush hour flowed like a river of impatience over the old stone bridge of Sector 17, only a few people noticed it, brushing it off as some distant echo from the construction yard, or perhaps an illusion caused by the wind bouncing off the underpass walls, until a boy named Avi, no older than 13, tugged on his mother's hand and said, "Ma, someone's crying down there," pointing through the gap in the railing where twisted vines dipped into shadows, and no light ever fully reached. His mother paused for a second, torn between the groceries she had just bought and the call of a voice not her own. But Avi's urgency pierced deeper than logic, and soon they were descending the steep dirt slope the shortcut kids used to cross into the marshy field below, shoes sliding, plastic bags swinging, breath catching as the cries grew louder with every step, echoing now like sobs trapped in a hollow chest. And when they finally crouched beneath the arch of the bridge, it took only a moment to see her, curled against the damp concrete like a shadow come to life, ribs sticking out, one paw trembling uncontrollably, her fur a matted patchwork of mud, blood, and something darker that clung to her as if refusing to let go. And beside her, God, beside her, were 3 tiny lumps barely breathing, newborn puppies no older than 2 days, blind and pink, and clinging to her belly with the last strength left in their fragile bodies. And when the mother dog lifted her head to look at Avi and his mother, there was something in her eyes that broke every dam inside them. Not fear, not anger, not even pain, just a kind of exhausted apology, as if to say, I couldn't keep them safe. And without waiting, Avi dropped to his knees and whispered, "It's okay, girl, we found you." And though she flinched at first, her head slowly sank back down onto the cold earth, a silent surrender not to death, but to hope, as if her watch had ended and someone else would now carry the burden. But what happened next wasn't a simple rescue, wasn't a clean scene of carrying her into the sunset. Because when Avi's mother called the local vet clinic, no one answered, and the municipal shelter refused to come. After hours, citing policy and protocol and the unspoken truth that no one wanted to deal with sick strays beneath old bridges. So they did the only thing their hearts allowed. Avi took off his jacket and gently swaddled the coldest pup, while his mother offered bits of roti soaked in water, which the mother dog licked with hesitation, too weak to chew, but too determined to stop trying. And they sat there, those 2 humans and 4 animals, until night fell and the traffic thinned and the stars blinked into place, watching from above like silent witnesses. And when finally another mother dog lover named Meher, who ran a small NGO from her own one-bedroom flat, answered a desperate WhatsApp message from Avi's mother. Things began to move, slowly, uncertainly, but towards something better, because Meher arrived with nothing more than a flashlight, 2 blankets, and the kind of stubborn compassion the world desperately needs, crawling into the dirt without a moment's pause, checking the pup's breathing, feeling for warmth, whispering softly in Hindi and English, "You're okay now, baby, we've got you." And over the next hour, under that bridge where no good stories were supposed to unfold, 4 lives were wrapped in towels, lifted into baskets, and driven away not to a shelter, but to Meher's home, because she knew the shelters would euthanize sick mothers, and these pups had just begun their journey. And so she cleared space in her kitchen, laid out heating pads, set alarm clocks for midnight feedings, and wrote their names on sticky notes: Myra, Piku, Beam, and the mother she called Chaya, because her fur, though darkened by trauma, still shimmered silver under the light, like a shadow touched by the moon. And while the city forgot that bridge and its secrets, a quiet miracle unfolded in a cramped apartment filled with hope, syringes, soft lullabies, and long nights where Meher and Avi took turns feeding, cleaning, and crying when one of the pups stopped breathing for 2 minutes before gasping back to life. And through it all, Chaya watched, never fully trusting, never fully resting, until the day she stood again on her own and nudged her pups gently with her snout, guiding them forward, away from death, towards something better. And just when it seemed they had made it, that the storm had passed, Meher discovered the truth that would send her to her knees. An old microchip buried beneath Chaya's matted neck fur. A military code registered to a handler from the northern border. A man presumed dead 2 years ago during a high-altitude avalanche while on a supply run with his canine partner. And the handler's name, Officer Ammon Rathor. And when Meher contacted the registry and confirmed the match, the story deepened into legend, because Chaya wasn't just any stray, but a retired sniffer dog, declared missing in action, separated from her unit, and believed gone. Yet here she was, a mother now, abandoned and broken under a bridge, still trying to protect life with the same fierce loyalty she once gave her battalion. And when the army was contacted and the surviving family of Officer Rathor was found, an elderly father in Jaipur who wept at the mention of Chaya's name, arrangements were made to bring her home. But the journey wasn't simple, because scars run deep and the road back to trust is not walked in straight lines. And the media got wind of it, as they often do when real stories bleed into something cinematic. And suddenly Chaya's face, once hidden in shadows, was plastered across timelines, reels, and front pages. Army hero found protecting puppies under bridge. Mother and soldier, the dog who survived it all, and donations poured in. But none of it mattered to Chaya, who still flinched at loud noises and refused to leave the pups alone even for a second. Though slowly, over months, with time, love, and endless patience, she healed not just her body, but her soul, learning that this new world had people who stayed, people like Avi, who visited every week with new toys, and Meher, who never stopped calling her Shaira, in jest poetess, because Chaya had written a poem in the dirt beneath a bridge, one line at a time, with pain and love and survival. And now that poem was being read across the world by people who needed it most, as the months gently folded into one another like dog-eared pages in an old book. Chaya's transformation from a trembling specter beneath a crumbling bridge to a dignified mother with a second chance at life became the kind of tale whispered between shelter volunteers, featured in late-night news segments, and shared through teary-eyed reels on social media, but far away from the buzz, away from the likes and shares and sudden fame. Her real story unfolded slowly in Meher's home, where love was measured not by words, but by actions. A warm bowl refilled without asking, a hand offered without condition, and a patient heart that never turned away even on the hard days. And those hard days came often because recovery, especially for someone like Chaya, wasn't just physical, it was emotional, spiritual, layered like the grime she had once worn. And although her wounds healed and her fur began to grow back with its former silver blue sheen, the shadows in her eyes sometimes lingered like ghosts, flickering to life at the sound of thunder, the slamming of a door, the unfamiliar bark of another dog outside. But always, without fail, she'd look to her pups, now growing fast and tumbling into their personalities, like cubs discovering their names for the first time. Myra was the explorer, always tugging at corners and sniffing boundaries. Piku was the smallest and most shy, often hiding under cushions until Chaya nuzzled her out. Beam, the largest, had the calm, noble eyes of a saint, but a bark that shook the walls when he needed to protect. And though Chaya often kept her distance when strangers came, she allowed Avi to sit near them, his presence a kind of quiet magic that the pups seemed to understand instinctively. And when Meher finally made the decision to host a small adoption event, not the kind with balloons and banners, but a cozy gathering in her friend's backyard under hanging lights and soft music, she did so not out of urgency, but in hope that maybe, just maybe, the right souls would find their way to these pups. And they did, slowly, gently, with the kind of people who didn't mind kneeling in the grass or getting muddy paws on their shirts. And one by one, the pups began to find homes that matched their hearts. Myra went to a young woman who ran a trekking business and promised mountain hikes and starlit campfires. Piku was taken by a retired librarian whose quiet home was filled with books and warm sunbeams. Beam, though offered by several families, refused to leave Chaya's side, growling gently until Meher finally whispered, "He's not leaving you, is he?" And Chaya, who had never responded to a human word in any clear way, nudged Meher's hand and looked into her eyes as if to say, "He is mine." And so it was decided Beam would stay. And for the first time in her life, Cheya wasn't just a survivor, a hero, or a mother. She was also a family. And it was during those months of calm, of soft routines and morning cuddles and slow walks through the garden, that an unexpected letter arrived, tucked into a beige envelope with an old emblem stamped in gold, a letter from Colonel Devraj Rathor, Officer Ammon's younger brother, who had served in the same regiment and only recently returned from a diplomatic mission abroad, unaware of the viral story surrounding Cheya. And the letter was not formal, but deeply personal, written in uneven script with ink blotches near the edges. And it read, "I was there the day Cheya was loaded into that chopper. My brother had insisted she go on the recon run with him because she never failed him, not once. And when the avalanche hit, we thought they were both gone. I couldn't bring myself to believe it until we found part of her harness near the ridge 2 days later. We assumed she'd fallen into a crevasse or been buried under snow. The thought that she survived, that she made it all the way back, alone, pregnant, and still fighting, it undoes me. I owe her everything." My brother's last recorded words were about her. He said, "Cheya smells something. I trust her. I would like to come see her if she'll let me." And when Meher read the letter aloud to Cheya, unsure if she'd even comprehend, the old dog did something she hadn't done before. She stood slowly and walked to the window, looking out with a stillness that felt like memory being stirred from the depths. And so the meeting was arranged, not as a reunion, but a pilgrimage. And when Colonel Rathor arrived, tall and grizzled, and carrying a framed photograph of his brother in uniform, no one spoke for the first few minutes, because Cheya simply stared. And he crouched, placed the frame on the ground, and whispered, "Hello, girl, I missed you." And in that moment, every wall she'd ever built crumbled, and she crossed the floor not with fear, but with purpose, pressing her head into his chest with a sound that wasn't quite a whimper, but not a growl either, something ancient and sacred, like the sigh of a soul remembering. And when he wept into her fur, stroking her neck and murmuring, "You kept your promise. You kept him safe as long as you could," there wasn't a dry eye in the room, not even from Beam, who leaned against Meher as if sensing the gravity of that reunion. And after that day, Colonel Rathor visited every week, bringing old stories, dog biscuits, and sometimes silence, which Cheya seemed to appreciate most, because some bonds don't need repeating. They simply exist, breathing in the spaces between heartbeat and memory. And in time, the story faded from headlines, from trending lists and viral reels, but it grew deeper roots elsewhere, in classrooms where teachers used Cheya's tale to teach empathy, in therapy groups where veterans whispered, "If she can come back from that, so can we," and in Meher's small NGO, which grew just enough to support more rescues under her new initiative, aptly named the Cheya Mission, focused on finding and rehabilitating former service animals abandoned after duty. And though Chaya grew older, her limbs stiff and eyes cloudy, she remained the quiet center of it all, like the moon that never speaks, but sees everything. And on her last winter, wrapped in her favorite blanket, with Beam curled beside her and Meher holding her paw, she took her final breath beneath a soft snowfall outside, the kind that muffles sound and slows time. And though Meher's heart broke into pieces, she found peace in knowing that Chaya had lived full circle, not just as a soldier, or a stray, or a mother, but as a legend, the kind that starts with a cry under a forgotten bridge and ends with a world changed forever by the echo it left behind. And so, as the gentle snowfall wrapped the earth in silence, Chaya's soul drifted upward like mist from the rivers she once crossed in fear, her heartbeat no longer trapped by pain or past. And though the world outside carried on with its ordinary rhythm, cars rushing, phones buzzing, children laughing and crying and growing, within the hearts of those she had touched, time paused to mourn and honor her in ways words could never fully capture. For Chaya had not simply been a dog found beneath a bridge. She had been a symbol, a bridge herself between past and present, war and peace, fear and healing. And in the weeks that followed her passing, Meher found herself unable to sleep properly, often waking in the middle of the night to check the blanket on the empty bed where Chaya used to snore softly, sometimes with one eye barely open to keep watch like the soldier she had always been. And Beam too struggled, pacing at night, whining at the door, bringing toys to the blanket as if still trying to coax his mother back into play. And Meher, though grieving deeply, knew she had to be strong for him, because grief does not ask for our readiness. It simply arrives and waits until we learn to walk beside it. And so she began to record her memories in a notebook labeled "The Dog Who Waited," filling its pages with stories not just of Chaya's resilience, but of her quiet moments, the way she loved mango slices, how she sat still for birds, how she would wait patiently until Meher finished her morning tea before barking to go outside, and each memory written down stitched together the fraying threads of Meher's sorrow until they began to feel more like a warm shawl than a wound. And one day, when Colonel Rathor visited, carrying a weathered journal of his own filled with letters he'd once written to his brother, but never mailed, they sat under the tree in Meher's backyard, Chaya's favorite spot, and read passages aloud, sometimes laughing through tears, sometimes crying through smiles. And in that shared vulnerability, a new bond formed, not of duty or debt, but of kinship, one forged by love for a dog who had refused to die forgotten. And later that month, the Chaya mission held a memorial gathering, inviting soldiers, rescue workers, dog trainers, children, and anyone who had followed her journey. And though the crowd was modest, the atmosphere was rich with reverence and joy as people shared stories, brought photos of their dogs, lit candles, and placed them around a stone bench carved with the inscription, "For the ones who wait, the ones who guard, the ones who love us beyond their pain." And at the center of it, a bronze statue unveiled, a lifelike rendering of Chaya sitting, alert yet calm, with her one ear cocked, and beneath her paw lay a sculpted collar engraved with her regimental number, and a tiny carved pup by her side, representing Beam. And though it was just a statue, many swore that on quiet evenings, when the wind moved just right through the trees, they could hear the faint chuff of a dog breathing nearby. And for Meher, life moved on, as it always does, not unchanged, but changed for the better, for deeper, for more aware, because now she looked at every dog on the street with a little more softness in her eyes, wondering what silent story lay hidden behind its gaze. And she took in more rescues, trained new volunteers, expanded outreach to mountain regions, and always kept Chaya's blanket neatly folded on her bed, never replacing it, never moving it, just letting it rest where it belonged. And Beam, too, found his rhythm again, growing into a calm, steady presence at the shelter, often guiding nervous newcomers to food bowls, or lying near frightened pups until they felt safe enough to sleep. And while he never took to other humans as he had to Meher and the Colonel, he was patient and kind, and occasionally, when the moon was full and bright, he would climb to the roof, stare at the sky, and let out a long, soulful howl, not one of sorrow, but of memory, of calling across the stars to a mother who once carried him beneath her broken body under a crumbling bridge. And far away from the city, in a quiet army base nestled among pines, Colonel Rathor began working with a new division, one focused not on war, but on healing, helping retired soldiers with PTSD adopt former service dogs, both strays and surrendered, and he often told them the story of Chaya and his brother, not as legend, but as truth, a reminder that survival is not just about staying alive, but about coming home. And sometimes the ones who bring us home walk on 4 legs and wear scars instead of medals. And in classrooms across the country, children read a simplified version of her story, illustrated, heartfelt, and wrote letters to Meher's shelter, some asking how they could help, others promising to be kind to strays, and one simply saying, "I want to be brave like Chaya when I grow up." And so her spirit lived on, not as something mourned, but something carried, like a light in one's pocket pulled out during moments of darkness. And in the end, though Chaya's heart stopped beating, the impact of her love, loyalty, and quiet courage never did, echoing onward through every rescued soul, every healed heart, every small act of compassion sparked by her journey. And that is how legends truly live, not in statues or stories alone, but in the way they change the world around them. And so, beneath that same moon that once lit her broken body beneath the bridge, now shining upon rooftops and shelters, and trembling paws taking their first steps into safety, Chaya's light continues, soft but unyielding, guiding the forgotten home. My brother had insisted she go on the recon run with him because she never failed him, not once. And when the avalanche hit, we thought they were both gone. I couldn't bring myself to believe it until we found part of her harness near the ridge 2 days later. We assumed she'd fallen into a crevasse or been buried under snow. The thought that she survived, that she made it all the way back, alone, pregnant, and still fighting, it undoes me. I owe her everything. My brother's last recorded words were about her. He said, "Chaya smells something. I trust her. I would like to come see her, if she'll let me." And when Meher read the letter aloud to Chaya, unsure if she'd even comprehend, the old dog did something she hadn't done before. She stood slowly and walked to the window, looking out with a stillness that felt like memory being stirred from the depths. And so the meeting was arranged, not as a reunion, but a pilgrimage. And when Colonel Rathor arrived, tall and grizzled, and carrying a framed photograph of his brother in uniform, no one spoke for the first few minutes, because Chaya simply stared, and he crouched, placed the frame on the ground, and whispered, "Hello, girl, I missed you." And in that moment, every wall she'd ever built crumbled, and she crossed the floor not with fear, but with purpose, pressing her head into his chest with a sound that wasn't quite a whimper, but not a growl either, something ancient and sacred, like the sigh of a soul remembering. And when he wept into her fur, stroking her neck and murmuring, "You kept your promise,"